Okay, welcome everyone. We are working with importing data into R using the reader package as well as base R. We're importing a CSV file. And so far we've done some cleaning up with that data. So for example, we were importing a student's information. Here's what it looks like when we use the reader function read underscore CSV. And there were some issues on the initial import, and we've addressed some of them. There were problems with NAs, there were problems with the column names, and we fixed those issues. And so the next issue I want to talk about is the data types that we have chosen for these columns. And that's what's being asked in question 3 is saying, okay, which of the variables that are currently stored in students should we convert to a different data type? And then let's do that conversion in this code cell. So as with renaming the columns, we can always, import our data using one of these functions and then tidy it up afterwards using a different function. So in this case, let's say I want to store student ID as an integer instead of a decimal. So I'm going to come over here and let's say the data frame, or it's a tibble, is students, and it was ID. And we are going to convert that to integer. And that's what this command would do over here. And we're going to convert other variables similarly, and I'll type those commands in down below. Okay, so here are some additional code that I added. So in addition to changing the student ID to an integer, it very well makes sense to change meal plan to a factor so that we can group people that said lunch only together into one class, people that said breakfast and lunch together into one group. So we're going to change meal plan to a factor with the factor function. You don't need to put as dot factor, though that would work as well. We typically just put factor and then the variable name, and then we're going to restore it back into the student's data frame. Full name is fine as a character. Favorite food is fine as a character. These are all distinct, so we wouldn't really group them together. That's the difference between meal plan and favorite food. It makes sense to group these together. And age is being stored as a character. We would want to store that. We would want to try to store that as some sort of numeric. So maybe people just entered integers. So let's see what happens if we try and convert age to an integer. We're going to store all of those variables back on top of the original one. So it's not going to change the values, but just the data type. And then let's see what happens when we print the result to the screen. So after printing this to the screen, we can see student ID was converted to an integer. We didn't do anything to these other two columns. Meal plan was converted to a factor. And age was converted to an integer, but something bad happened. And that is this value over here was the character string FIVE for 5. And when I tried to do this conversion, it was saying this is an integer. So anything in this column which was not an integer was just replaced with an NA by default. So that character string could not be converted to an integer. So it was just deleted and treated as a missing value. So this is not a good way to convert age to an integer because we just lost some information. So let me come back and load up the student's data frame again without removing that value. I want to keep that value there. And so down here, let me do this cleaning up process and let me just say, we're not ready to convert age to an integer until after we've fixed the data entry issue with the number 5 being entered as a character string FIVE. So let me run this code cell. We've got our value FIVE back in our data frame, but age is now being stored as a character. So we haven't fixed that yet. We can't do that until we fix this data entry issue. But we have converted meal plan to a factor. We have converted student ID to an integer. So those conversions did work just fine. In the next video, we'll talk about how we can use the dplyr package to fix this data entry issue to replace the 5, the character string 5 with the number 5. Thank you.